The Charlotte Hornets pick up a win again against the Pistons, and again in dramatic fashion. Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball each go for over 30. We got a lot to talk about today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson jamming out after another tight win against the Pistons. This one comes in overtime. It was toit. Yes, it was toit like a toiga. Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Follow him on Twitter at Doug Branson LOH. Also, you can listen to the Locked On NBA podcast, which he also hosts. I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. This episode is brought to you by Robinhood. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous, goodness gracious, generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhoodgold.com/gold. Robinhood.com/gold. All right, we also have a newsletter. Your favorite podcast now has the Locked On Hornets newsletter. Again, the daily newsletter that we've had for a little while now. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets newsletter. The Hornets win 123-121 in OT. LaMelo Ball, what was his response going to be after getting benched in the fourth quarter against the Nets? It was a good one offensively, 35 points, 12 of 27, only 4 of 14 from distance, but he got to the foul line, hit 7 of his 8 free throw attempts, dished out 9 assists, only 2 turnovers, Doug, and did not have any turnovers, I think, for a while in this game. So LaMelo responded well. We'll get to the fouling with LaMelo. If we were to lead with one certain story, and there's a couple that are in contention, I think we got to go with Brandon again. Again, meaning the fact that he tapped it in at the buzzer against the Pistons last time. Here he is just putting the stake right into the heart of Pistons fans. 38 points, 15 of 26, hit 8 3-pointers. So the 38 points that he scored, career high. The 8 3-pointers that he made, also a career high. 7 rebounds, 4 assists. And an OT, Brandon really stepped up when LaMelo Ball was over on the bench because he fouled out very, very, very early into OT.
But we're not going to talk about that yet. We're gonna keep it positive. We're going to talk about Brandon Miller, and the 2 threes that he hit in overtime were absurd. They were astounding. They were confounding. I mean, particularly the one that he hit when it was a baseline out of bounds play because the shot clock was down to just like a second. I mean, there was just enough time to catch and shoot. And Grant sets up a great screen, gets Brandon Miller open. Cody Martin throws a perfect rainbow pass to get it up over top of the defense. Brandon catches, but he still has to fall away to take the shot, knocks it down, and then just the second one was just straight up and down, shooting over the top of his man. But it was a deep 3. He was incredible. 15 points between the fourth quarter and overtime. And then again, once LaMelo Ball goes out, you're wondering, is Brandon Miller going to have enough to step up and lead this team? And he did it. And he did it offensively, as I just said, but he did it defensively, snatching a lob attempt by Jaden Ivey out of the air. I went and watched that play a couple of times. All the things that it takes to make that play. You've got to have the athleticism to jump up and grab the ball. You've got to have the timing because this was a transition play and he's running behind the play and somehow gets in front of the lob pass. Like I ran out of words, and that doesn't happen very often to me. And it's not great when you're trying to write a newsletter about it. But I ran out of words to describe what I was seeing from Brandon Miller last night.
No, that play was crazy because if I remember correctly, I haven't looked at a clip of it yet, but even just in real time, he jumps off 1 foot. he has to sprint to his spot. It's an effort play too, right? Everything that you mentioned, you have to check off all the boxes. Not only do you have to have the timing and the athleticism, you have to have the all-out want to in order to get that pass. And especially to think about, you mentioned the timing, you have to jump early enough to get a full hand on that basketball, or else you're just looking to tip it. That's all Brandon is looking to do, is disrupt the pass, disrupt the flight of that. And sure enough, he grabs it, and that is so much cooler than swatting it into the fifth row, even though that would be awesome.
It's
as well.
smarter. I mean, it's smart because you get the possession.
That's the KG Bill Russell thing, right? Like, say, why would I swat it when I can get the possession for my team? You kind of luck into that stuff. It's like, oh, okay, I can grab it. Sweet, let's go ahead and roll with it. But it was luck created by his skill, athleticism, and all-out effort, which was fun to see. Brandon was incredible. The threes. Doug, that was the splashiest of splashes, the out-of-bounds play to create the second to last three that he hit. I mean, that was you talk about nothing but net. It's what the designs on the shirt are when they give you the basketball going through the hoop. Nothing but net. I don't know if you remember those shirts, but that's what the design looked like to me watching that go through the hoop. Brandon was incredible with the shot making, and he's been very good at the shot making the last two games. This is after we were, I don't know about how worried we were. I was not worried, but there were people discussing how he was not hitting his shots, the mid-range, getting to the rim, yada, yada. You know, maybe there's some stuff there later on, but he's hitting his shots right now, and he's hitting a bunch of three-pointers. It helped him a ton last night. They needed every single bit of his positive performance.
Yeah, and he was aggressive, particularly at the beginning of the fourth quarter before LaMelo checked in. And then in overtime, once LaMelo fouled out, he was aggressive. And then, after the game, several questions going Brandon Miller's way and to Coach Lee and to LaMelo, essentially like, are you asking Brandon to be more aggressive? And the answer is yes. The coaches, his teammates, they're all asking Brandon, hey, listen, we know that you're a winner. We know that you love to set things up for your other teammates. All of that is great. But sometimes you are such a great scorer. Sometimes we need you to take the basketball and go make a play. And that's probably somewhat scary for like every player, because there are all these sort of milestones or checklists that you have to check off as you ascend the ladder from, good NBA player to great NBA player to star NBA player to all star NBA player to superstar NBA player. And one of those milestones is, can you, when the defense knows that you're the guy that they're going to go to, can you make a play despite that? And he was able to do that several times in this game. But that's got to be a scary thing. I'm glad he picked up the aggression late in the game.
Yeah, Charles Lee also said after the game, Brandon also, he was reminded that he likes putting those shots up, so you don't have to push him too hard. So you got to push him, but once he lets a couple shots fly and they go in, you don't have to push him too hard after that. But it's all true. I'm glad Brandon was able to bring this team to a victory, because he did so offensively and even defensively with a couple of plays late in this game.
And he's a second-year player. It's not unusual to have to push a guy like that. Some players do come in to the league, particularly when they're drafted high, and they think, I'm the guy. I've already got the crown on my head. I'm ready to go. And then some guys don't. And I think that's okay, because once he gets his max deal, once he gets his extension, there's going to be no question at that point. There are hierarchies to this whole thing. And I think what you're seeing play out right now is that there is a clear hierarchy on this team. And it's, we're going to LaMelo first. And then if LaMelo takes himself out of the game, then we'll go to Brandon more exclusively. I'd like to see that balance be a little bit more balanced instead of it being sort of like one guy does everything and then the other guy does everything. I think they've got to figure that out. But, and part of that process might be pushing Brandon again to say, all right, I need you to take over this possession. I need you to demand to take over this possession late in the game.
Yeah, I mean, we're focusing on the good. I think part of that also is, how much do you trust the basketball in the hands of Brandon Miller to create anything outside of one dribble, two dribble, shoot? So that's another part of it. We can get that's reserved for the bad, though. So maybe we touch on that just a little bit, but also we got to get to LaMelo's performance too. He fouls out, but he was fun to watch when he was in there. Let's get to it. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Yeah, what were your biggest takeaways from LaMelo Ball? We'll share ours coming up next here on LOH.
It's complicated.
This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time?
Game Time?
Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets easier, and it makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play more accessible. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets anymore. They've got plenty of benefits, all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. They give you seat views. This is a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Plus, they give you Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONHornets for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONHORNETS. I can spell Locked On Hornets for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. This episode is also brought to you by Chime. Have you ever hit that moment when you knew it was time to get serious about your finances? Maybe it was saving for a dream trip, paying off credit card debt, or just getting your financial life in order. That's where Chime comes in. With no monthly fees, no maintenance charges, and fee-free overdraft up to $200, Chime has you covered for those uh-oh moments. Yeah, we got some uh-oh moments every once in a while. Whether it's withdrawing cash from over 50,000 fee-free ATMs or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit, Chime gives you the tools to make progress. If you need a little help, friends can even give you a boost to temporarily increase your overdraft limit. And when they do, you can return the favor. To date, Chime members have been spotted over $30 billion. That's with a B, 30 billion. That's crazy. Ready to make your fall finances greener? Open a Chime account in just 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. That's chime.com/NBA. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Spot Me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members enrolled in Spot Me and are subject to monthly limits. Terms and conditions apply. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details. More Locked On Hornets ahead. LaMelo, 30 points, over 30. Can't get to 40 no matter how close we get to 40 points. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Brandon almost did. He got closer, 38.
Yeah, he did. I thought there was a time where, well, I mean, I guess Brandon did a lot of...
Let me just say this. Can we just throw the ball to Brandon at one of those fouling situations and give the guy 40? Like, I mean, had he not done enough to that point to earn the right, I think it went to Cody on one and Grant on the other.
Didn't he go to Grant on another one?
Yeah, I get you probably don't want to go to 40 on free throws, but like he had done enough. We would have given it to him.
Who cares? No, you're right. No, free throw. I don't care how you get 40. Nobody's going to remember, oh, he got it on free throws. Those still count. Those absolutely still count. So yes, I'm totally with you on that. But
and he didn't have a single one in the whole game. That would have, if he had gotten one of those gimme free throws, that would have been his first attempts of the game. So crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I think that speaks to what we saw from him. The shot was going down, baby. Life is easier when the shot's going down. You don't need to get to the foul line. LaMelo didn't need to, but he still did, and he's been doing it a lot more this season. Doug, I think we're starting to get a nice enough sample size here from Melo getting to the foul line where you can still feel pretty good about this lasting throughout the season. 8 attempts from the foul line. That was nice to see. The problem is it's the opposite side of the whole fouling situation that we can also expect to last the rest of the season. I mean, look, I hope it doesn't, but here's LaMelo. He has 3. I mean, Doug, here he is balling, by the way, like playing very nice basketball. 3 fouls with about 3 minutes left to go in the first quarter. It was funny because I was talking with Willie P., who does a lot of stuff with us at WFNZ. He was there at the game as well. It both clicked. Oh, yeah, Charles Lee, he's going to ride LaMelo for the entire first quarter after that benching. He ain't coming out. Ain't no way. Because when they made their first switch, everybody else is coming in. LaMelo's staying in there. It's like, okay, LaMelo's going to get his minutes. He's going to get his 3 minutes back. And then he fouls. Another just swipe. Like, it was a terrible foul, Doug. What are you going to do? Like, just standing straight up, swiping down, out of position. Charles, you could see, I looked right at Charles on the sideline, and he was just kind of stoic. Like, he didn't give you any emotion, but he just was blank-faced.
He knew people were watching. He knew people were watching.
So he has to take him out. What are you going to do? 3 fouls with 3 minutes left in the first quarter. He takes him out. And luckily, like, LaMelo plays decently well enough to avoid, I think, a higher than normal foul rate for the rest of the game. And only picks up 3 more in extended time. But it was the first 3 that killed him here. Despite over 30 points, despite some just incredible shots, your typical LaMelo hot streak. Doug, there's the other side of this that we have to talk about, which makes it incredibly frustrating because we just want to talk about all the good, and yet here he is fouling out of an OT game.
Yeah, look, man, 35 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists. 4 of those assists helped them get off to a great offensive start in the first quarter. He's been doing that more and more, helping other guys get going in the first. He had 13 points in the third quarter. That helped them build the 20-point lead that they would sacrifice later in the fourth quarter before going to overtime. But so on the foul situation, like, I think I texted this to you last night. Like, when he gets frustrated, so I have a toddler running around right now, and I can, like, tell, I sort of have this sixth sense now about when she's about to do something to, like, mess up something, like throw a bowl of cereal off the table. I can just sort of sense in the moments before it happens, this is about to, I see a look in her eye. I just know now, I have that sense. I'm getting that same sense with LaMelo. Like, I know when he drives, falls down to the ground, the way he looks at the ref, the way he motions to the ref, I'm like, this guy's going to run down and get a frustration foul. And sure enough, he did it in this game. So that's silly. He admitted after the game that 3 of the 6 fouls were silly. And that's the thing about the final foul. Seconds, I don't know even if a second had ticked off in overtime.
It was, so early.
But so he grabs Jaden Ivey, holds the jersey. First of all, that inbounds was horrible. Like, Brandon, you just got to throw it in, man. Just like you had Josh Green, whatever play you were going to run there to get it to LaMelo and do something crazy, abandon it and just, like, throw it to Josh and make the easy pass. Instead, he throws it over the top. Ivy intercepted it anyway, even with LaMelo holding his jersey. Look, whatever you think about that foul, if you think that's a weak foul, that a superstar shouldn't get that call, he hasn't won a playoff series. I mean, I don't know, like, what. Anyway, that's another conversation. But, like,
don't go to the dark place. No, it was weak, but I know your point that you're about to say, and I agree.
And the point is, you don't put yourself in a position to give the refs that kind of power. And if you don't make that frustration foul, if you don't slap down on those easy kind of technique plays, then, Brandon Miller was able to stay in this game. Brandon Miller plays defense. He messes up on defense too, Brandon Miller does. He doesn't box out all the time. He makes mistakes. Yeah. But he's available when the team needs him most. So that's my take on the fouls.
Yeah. No, LaMelo, the first quit the fouls, yes, for sure. And I'm glad that LaMelo admitted it, right? And he knows. It's the frustration. It's the fact that he does care. He's mad that he committed some mistake and he wants to go, and I don't even know. Look, Charles Lee talked about it afterwards, right? He said they're a lot more competitive than fans will give them credit for, that there is some tact in some of these fouls, but yes, that they're silly, and of course they need to stop. LaMelo admitted it. Charles Lee understands the assignment here, and this is what I also talked about too. It's not just that LaMelo has to come out of the game. Okay, so your best player is out of the game. Automatically a tough situation for you to overcome unless you go to the Nets game 347 and it's intentional from Charles Lee. But usually it's not intentional to have LaMelo come out of the game. Already in a disadvantage. But what also puts you in a disadvantage is when you play your best player, you allow him to roll with 3 fouls in the first half, and then they just matchup hunt. Like, a lot of these teams already seek LaMelo out on defense, but they were matchup hunting LaMelo constantly, trying to get him in the post too. Like, okay, let's get Cade, LaMelo, post, where it's all sorts of physical, and let's see if you can defend Cade without fouling, and if you can't, then we'll hit some buckets. So what happened was they went on a little mini run. Now, the Hornets countered that because LaMelo was so good offensively. So during the it wasn't even a run. It was just a stretch of buckets that Detroit hit. But the Hornets countered that because offensively, LaMelo is also so good. And the Hornets just had it rolling in that, back and forth going across, 10 possessions, 5 apiece. But there was a guy, I forget who the foul was credited to, Doug, but Cade, post up, LaMelo, dribble, pound. LaMelo has to back off a tiny bit, but then somebody comes over and then they pick up the foul. So then Cade goes to the foul line. Like, it just makes life harder for you defensively when he's out of the game, or if he's in the game and you're so worried about him picking up more. I think LaMelo did a pretty good job, right? Like, for the second quarter, Rod Morrow tweeted at me too. Third quarter, he did a pretty good job after the first of defending, and like, there were a couple of no-no moments, but for the most part, it was a normal foul rate the rest of the way. It was just the first three that he picked up that were maddening.
Yeah, it's controlling the game. It's controlling yourself. It's controlling your emotions. I mean, these are all good learning experiences. I mean, we're only 15 games into the regular season, but what I would just tell folks is like this, and LaMelo knows this, and Charles Lee knows this. This only gets tougher if the Hornets ever get to the postseason. Like, the game gets tougher, the decisions get tighter, the time windows to make those decisions get tighter, and the defenses get more elaborate, and so all of this stuff gets more difficult. And so, you have to take these things and learn from them. But what we've seen so far is that it keeps happening, and so I don't know what it's going to take, honestly. But it just seems like every game we're dealing with something like this from him. And I think what's also concerning, too, is if you go to the fourth quarter, Brandon Miller had to go in to begin the fourth quarter. He had like 7 points before LaMelo checks in. Then LaMelo checks in. He does break the seal on a little bit of a scoring drought. But then I felt like, again, LaMelo was pressing a little bit. He tried to take that step back three over Jalen Duren, ISO three. It was terrible. The possession where they didn't get 2 for 1 at the end of the game, as the game is kind of falling apart, you have an opportunity to go 2 for 1. The pass gets the ball gets passed around the perimeter between LaMelo, Brandon, Martin. Somebody's got to step up and make a play there and get a 2 for 1 situation. Yeah. Instead, you don't. I mean, I don't know. It was just it's all concerning as they try to look. These games are tight, and it's all coming down to Brandon and LaMelo. So a lot of this might be unfair because Trey Mann was not the hot hand in this game. Musa is doing amazing things on the boards, but you can't count on him for any points. So like it is all down to these two guys, and you're asking a lot of them at this point.
Yeah, let's continue to talk about it. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
He's everywhere!
We'll talk more about Melo and Miller and give you some other observations on this win over the Pistons coming up in the last segment. Before we get to the last segment, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhoodgold.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. More Locked On Hornets ahead. You mentioned nobody was stepping up. I think part of the problem that we see with Melo and the bad shot selection, sometimes his teammates force him into bad shot selection. There was a play late in this game where LaMelo passes to Grant, and Grant is slow with the trigger, doesn't shoot it, and he was open. And I'm sure with the way that Charles Lee preaches taking open shots and not hesitating, I'm sure Charles Lee wanted Grant to let that thing fly, but he doesn't. And so what happens is Grant kind of freezes at the top of the key, and we know he's bad for a few terrible turnovers every now and then, and he'll give you some games where he turns it over despite maybe a lower usage than other players. But this is what happened. LaMelo has to save the day. So pass it to Grant, doesn't shoot the open shot. Great. All right, everybody was kind of getting ready for you to shoot it. Now LaMelo has to redirect, come over and get the basketball. And it's like this, borderline fumbling exchange. LaMelo gets the basketball in what was a well-defended kind of handoff, and then LaMelo has to hoist up a shot because Grant didn't shoot the open one. And so, yeah, they got to figure that stuff out, but it's not necessarily even just LaMelo. It's the other guys, to what you were kind of alluding to as well. Man, let that thing fly if you got an open shot. This is where I think you would probably see a couple of field goal attempts go down for LaMelo if anybody else trusted the other players as much, but also if the players trusted themselves, shoot it, shoot it. Yeah, that's what it was in that play too. And the other thing real quickly, if the basketball is not in LaMelo's hands, Doug, then things get kind of dicey. Like that, it feels like there's point guard depth. And I kind of, I guess, fell into the trap of thinking that they had point guard depth when it was LaMelo, Trey, Vasa Micic. There's not enough minutes for Nick Smith Jr. So we actually have a little bit of an embarrassment of riches. But besides Vasa, who isn't this ball handling professor wizard, but he's going to take care of it. He's going to pass it and facilitate it well. Trey Mann has that a part of his game, but it's like so clear. Your floor general, it's LaMelo. And then there's about 4 different tiers between LaMelo and whoever else you want to handle that basketball. And that's something that really hurts this team when he does have to go to the bench.
Yeah, so I'm with you on him not having enough help in these situations, and maybe getting some of the centers back will help a little bit with that, because you can run some legitimate pick and roll plays where teams are actually afraid of the roll man making a play at the rim. Because I think so much of this, with both Brandon's struggles earlier in the year and then these struggles right now for LaMelo in the fourth quarter over the past couple of games, to me come down to defenses going, I'm going to take you away. I'm going to send 2, sometimes 3 guys at you. Yeah. You're not going to get to the rim anymore. And LaMelo is amazing as a 3-point shooter and a shot creator for others. But we've always said, in terms of just first step, burst, that's not his game. He's not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's not going to get to the rim even if you throw a couple guys at him. Because I think I texted you at one point, if he's going to get to 40, he's going to have to get to the line even more than he did in that fourth quarter. And he tried, and he wasn't getting the calls, and they were being physical with him, and they were keeping him away from the rim. That's just kind of where LaMelo is with his game. I don't think that's really changing. I just think that's kind of that's where he's going to settle in. You can still be a star or superstar in the league and not necessarily have that. You just got to shoot the lights out. And he does. Yeah. But he doesn't have anyone else, often that's enough of a threat, enough of a pull on the defense. And maybe that's going to be Brandon Miller scoring 38 a few more times and pulling a little bit more attention away. Because, I totally agree. He was forcing stuff. And I've said this multiple times. He's forcing stuff because in a lot of these situations, he has to.
Yeah, and I actually had a different takeaway. I did actually feel like LaMelo was getting to the rim enough later in the game. I think he was when he wanted to, but you're right. I think I meant to get to 4. I meant late. So let's see, fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, he got to the line 0 times. In the third quarter, how many times did he get to the line? LaMelo got to the line once. I'm not talking about the line. I'm talking about the paint. What I thought with LaMelo, I thought there was the finger roll, the floater within that 8-foot space. I thought there were times
floater game was locked in.
And there was the underhand shot where he goes through a couple of guys. That was an incredible shot where it's just the finger roll off of the glass. So LaMelo is getting better. That's God. He's so good offensively, man. It is so tough to stop him. And there are still things that you can clearly see him continue to get better at. You want him to play. And I think the center thing, that's when we'll get our final answer to it. What else can we see get easier for LaMelo, right? Because maybe Mark Williams comes back and we see a lot of the same stuff. But Doug, I doubt it. I really do. I think you're going to see a lot more pick and roll where LaMelo. Doug, there are so many times where that seam pass LaMelo just doesn't throw because it's Musa, and we love Musa. We love him for what he does, and he does not take the seam pass and then go score on you. He's going to go get the tap-ins. He's going to get the offensive trash points. But, like, I think that world, the pick and roll game with a legitimate, skilled big guy, that has to change some of the dynamic of your offense. Well, it has to.
I tell you what. So his line was 35, 6, and 9, and they go into overtime, okay? But again, they had a 20-point lead at one point in the third quarter, and there was that section after LaMelo checked in that until the end of regulation that the differential between Detroit and Charlotte was 10. Detroit, it wasn't a 10-0 run. They had 10 more points than the Hornets as they came back at the end of that fourth quarter, okay? If LaMelo, instead of 35, 6, and 9, has a line of 25, 6, and 13 assists, 12 assists, they probably hold on to that lead. And we're not even talking about overtime. We're not talking about fouling out. And I want to make clear, that is not a critique of LaMelo not passing enough. He's passing a lot. The critique is the guys he's passing to can't make enough plays. And so his assist numbers, instead of being, 12, 13, are 7, 8, 9. So
it's a bunch of spot up. Right, it's a bunch of catch and shoot with the assist, and it's a bunch of, like, if you're open in the paint, I'll find you, and all you have to do is just put a shot up. Last few things, if we just want to focus on these two guys for the show, maybe that's a good idea. With Brandon, there's some bad from Brandon too. Look, 38 points. Let's focus on the good. He did have 7 turnovers. There were some costly ones, man, in the fourth quarter. Like, this is where LaMelo helps. It was.
Well, he threw one into it was like his arm was a t-shirt can, and he threw it into like the 15th row. It's like, what? What was that pass?
Look, he took ownership of it. Like, he points, says, my fault. But you're right. I mean, he throws it, 10 rows up into the stands, and he was looking for a corner kick out. On the defensive, so the last offensive possession for Detroit in the fourth quarter, there is a real bad miscommunication. So I'll say I didn't come back and watch the game after seeing it live. So when you watch it live, obviously you don't have the replay, but it looked like I know it was a miscommunication. I just don't know who blew the responsibility. It seemed like Brandon is late to get out on the shooter. Thank God shooter doesn't pull the trigger out there. Instead drives, misses the shot. But what happens? Brandon missed a box out. We know Brandon missed a box out. So they get the offensive rebound, and then they miss it again. Two mistakes after turnovers. So those are the stuff that needs to be cleaned up too. Again, let's focus on Brandon going nuclear in overtime to save the day. Awesome stuff. That is some, pound your chest basketball. Yikes with the last possession that he had on defense and some of the turnovers in this one.
I'll throw one more in there. In OT, game tie 109-109, and Tobias Harris hits what I think, I'm guessing here, conservative estimate, his 27th corner three-point shot in that game.
Was it the first one of overtime? It might have been the first bucket. Yeah, I think they hit a 3 real early in OT.
Yeah, and if you go back and watch that play, Brandon Miller just completely falls. So he turns around. He does a full 360, having no idea who to guard. And so I think why we're pointing this out is because so much of the responsibility is on these two, and it's incredible what they did with that responsibility in getting this win. But it was against Detroit, who's playing a little bit better, but still not great. And Cade, they don't even have Cade Cunningham because Grant Williams fouled him, and he fell on his hip. Yeah. And so they didn't even have Cade Cunningham, who was destroying them with the pass in the fourth quarter. So much of the fourth quarter was, hey, we're going to double Cade, and Cade going, okay, that's fine. I'm just going to make a pass to Tobias Harris in the corner. You're not going to be able to get there in time. Bing, bang, boom. So Cade was annihilating them. They don't have Cade for OT. So the Charlotte Hornets escaped with that win. We can celebrate it for what it is. Every win's great. They absolutely escaped with that win. And when they do get help, when these centers do get back, we'll talk about that more tomorrow. We got an update on Nick Richards and Mark Williams.
Yep.
When they get back, then I think those mistakes, if they hang around, you're going to put the microscope on those a little bit more because they are going to have less responsibility in the offense. And so there's just going to be more opportunities for those to shine and less opportunities for them to score, 30, what is the first time ever in franchise history you have two players score, which is crazy because, I mean, you think back to like Mason and Rice, they played so many minutes during those like all NBA seasons.
That wasn't Mace's game, I guess.
Yeah,
you would think maybe like an LJ Zoe going crazy, but Mace was feeding everybody, and Glenn would just like go for the 30. You would think. No, you're right. You would think that wouldn't be the case, but here we are. The final thing. This is the time where I continue to resuscitate the pod because I see some astonishing stats. It's happened 2 times in a row. 20 made 3-pointers for the second straight game, and yet here we are with such a tight one. They lost the first game, and here they lose the second game. Now this one's OT, so yes, you get some extra time to hit some threes, but even still, 20 made 3-pointers for the second straight game. Just to put that in perspective, like we can go back to when James Borrego was the coach and he was allowing the other team to set a franchise record for 3-pointers made in a game. And it was like 23, 22. Here are the Hornets with 20 in back-to-back games. It's ridiculous. They're just shooting it, and they're hitting it right now. So it's a nice thing to see, I guess.
And I don't know what the points in the paint number was, but it's going to be so deceiving in this game because it's not going to count for points in the paint when Tobias Harris hits 27 corner threes. But if you just go back and watch, so much of that was generated by virtue of the fact that they don't have anyone to anchor the paint. And so when they throw the slightest little bit of shade towards Cade, then it's just the recovery has to be so tight every single time back to the corner. If it's just slightly off, guy's going to have an open look. And Tobias Harris, to his credit, knocked all of them down, just would not quit knocking them down. I mean, talk about escape. I mean, you get lucky here, and Cade not only gets injured, but he had an inefficient night. Jaden Ivey was having an inefficient night. Like, whew, you got lucky on this one, buddy.
46-40, by the way. The Pistons won the points in the paint battle. 46 points.
It should have been like 96-40 if you count all of Tobias Harris's corner threes.
They did win the rebound battle, though, by 13.
That's Moussa Diabate. Maybe we can talk about him more. I've got it in the graphic.
No. The Pistons won the rebound battle. No, you're good. But it's Moussa limiting that for sure.
Yeah, it would have been a disaster without the Moose.
Yeah, it would have been. All right, that'll do it. I promise. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast, and that does include YouTube. Also, go check out Locked On NBA. Doug is hosting that as well. He's writing along with David Walker at everyhornetsboxscore.com. And I'm Walker Mehl. Listen to me talk about this game again on Wes and Walker Sports Radio, 92.7 WFNZ. Have a great weekend. We'll be back with you on Monday.